between two conflicting estimates. Somebody is lying.
Okay, homies, I'm about to make a hot take. I'm about to make a hot take about white culture. Because Ben Shapiro is always talking some shit about black culture and black culture. Let me tell you about white culture. One of the key things that I find distasteful, how about that, about white culture. And this is coming from someone who went to boarding school. I was the one black guy. I was the one black friend. I went to boarding school in England where I was maybe 3 or 4 black people in a school of like 300 kids, right? So I got a front row seat to white supremacy. I got the front row seat. I stayed in motherfucking white people's houses. I hung out with white folks. My best friends was white. All of that shit. All of that shit. So you know, whatever. I get it. Not every single white person is evil, but every white person's a white supremacist. Oh, hot take, I said it. Now, that doesn't mean you're white supremacist, mean you freaking a part of an organization or some shit. It doesn't mean that. It just means you benefit from white supremacy. It's a system that benefits white people over black people. Now, it doesn't mean you can't be a black person and be successful under white supremacy. It doesn't mean you can't have dark skin and be successful under white supremacy. It doesn't mean you can't be poor if you white. You know, it doesn't mean that. That's some oversimplistic naivety shit that I'm not going to debate. People, you got to go to Ben Shapiro. He'll debate you on that nonsense. I won't. I don't give a fuck. This is what it is. Okay. But okay, so white supremacy. I'm saying all white people are white supremacists, but I'm not necessarily saying that is like a bad thing per se. It means that you're just part of it. You just benefit from the system. An individual white person can acknowledge that racism exists, can hang out with black people, can know for a fact that, hey, black people are done wrong. They can know all of that, be a cool person interpersonally. But when they're walking down the street and the cops are looking at you and you with your black friend, the view is different. The perception is different. That's just the way it goes. You know, whatever. I personally, I'm at an age in my life where I've gone through the stages of grief and denial and all of that to where I'm at now, where I've come to the level of acceptance. It's the stages of grief you go through where no black person wants to believe in racism because it's not beneficial to you. At the end of the day, once the acceptance comes, you realize you at the bottom of the race relations. You're not at the top of the race relations. Okay, but. Okay, so what is my misgiving about white culture? Here it is. Here's what it is. White people just have a deadly discomfort for being uncomfortable, for discomfort. They have a distaste, a contempt for discomfort. That's what I'm really trying to say. They do not like to be uncomfortable. They don't like to talk about uncomfortable things. They don't like to be in uncomfortable situations. If you even look at a lot of kind of white comedy, that nervous guy Ben Stiller energy type comedy, a lot of it is about being uncomfortable and being afraid. Afraid and uncomfortable. Afraid to just say what the fuck is on your mind. You know what I'm saying? So many comedies, situational comedies, whatever, rom-coms, like that. I call the Ben Stiller type of comedy where the comedy is predicated on a man who cannot just express their feelings openly and just say what they want at that moment. And then all this comedy ensues because instead of being open and honest, they go around these roundabout ways of doing all these lies and all this other subversions and then at the end they get to the truth anyway. And after an hour and a half of nonsense, you get to the truth because finally just telling the truth it's like, dude, really? Keeping it real. That's what brothers say. If you hang around black people, it's like that. Ever since I, was aware in America, it's like keep it real. That's the main thing. Just say what you mean. Even if it's unpopular. But they don't do that. So it's like when you're talking about race and shit, the reality is black people, people of color. When I talk to Asian cats, people of who are Muslim. religion, or people from Middle Eastern cultures, India, whatever, Asian cultures, other African nations, they're not that uncomfortable talking about race. They're just not. But white people are very uncomfortable talking about race. Just talking about like general race relations. It seems like only white people only talk about race when a black person gets killed, or when they have something negative to say about other races. They don't just talk about, hey, this is the history of race relations in America. They try to pretend that shit don't exist. And so it's just this cowardly way of approaching conversation. So what happens is black and white people in America, they don't really talk to each other, because black people, the things that they have to say to most white people, the white people, they don't have the ability to hear it, and without taking it personally, without having kind of little meltdowns, they're just scared. And that's why, that's why you see videos of them calling the police and shit. It's like, they're cowards, you know what I mean? Hot take, cowards. White people are cowards. They're very, very scared. And I even sometimes they'll tell you, I'm scared of black people. I've had conversations where people feel comfortable enough to be candid with me, and I've heard that on multiple occasions, that they are afraid. Afraid of what? I don't know. It's like kind of how people are afraid of homeless people. It's like, homeless people, how are you afraid of someone who doesn't have a home? They're literally in the disadvantaged situation, but people are irrational. They don't think things through. It's like, and they don't think, well, why am I scared? Most of the time when people are scared, you actually end up talking to them. It's because of the limited experiences that they've had of black people. It just all boils down to they just don't know that many black people, and most of the imagery they get is from television and media, which is negative. And so that part of that culture where they're just afraid to be open, afraid to tell the truth, you have to get them really in a comfortable situation before they'll tell you their feelings on race. Otherwise, they're just very, very, they are very elusive. They won't tell you. They lie about it. They will lie about how their racial feelings, because it's usually not positive. So that's one thing. So you can never really talk about it with them because they don't want to talk about it. They won't tell you. And then also, I get it. A lot of black people in America, also rightfully so, I mean, take the negative things that a white person might say personally, and it's hard to have a back and forth also on black people's side, because Americans, that's just the American way too. Like, so a lot of black people, I'm different. I went to boarding school in England. I've had an international life. My parents are immigrants, so I don't take things personally like that. But I get why someone would. So I'm not one to be like, oh, why would you take it? I know why someone would take it personally. I just don't. So, when someone like me who's able to, like, I think I have a specific skill where I'm able to get people to be comfortable and open up to me. But not everyone has that. And so to have that expectation of people is kind of like, it's too much. And then, another thing with on the extreme end of white supremacy is the extremists, they're also a bunch of pussies, because it's like, even those skinheads used to be such badasses back in the day, bro, they were only tough when their numbers were outnumbered. Like, if they could catch you in an alley and it was like 5 of them and you, then they're hella tough. They King Kong at that point. But when you see them at the party and something, you recognize, oh, that motherfucker skinhead and shit. But he not with his crew, but he still want to be partying, still want to be with the other, he act like, oh, he ain't going to have his regalia on, he ain't going to have his shit on like that, and he's going to, like, be a little more meek and mild. I would see it on all those fools who would be, like, hella gully when they're with their people, but then when they're on their own, they, like, trying to be cool, oh, yeah, no, and then trying to fit in. Because, some of those people are on the fence. They want to be down with that shit, but they also they know that regular society doesn't accept it. So they want to be a renegade, but they still want to, so you can see some of those people who they still kick it with, people of other races and shit, but they're like, they in between, and they definitely will, if they're only around just white people, will hella talk shit and hella say nig this or whatever that. So, and then they're only tough when they got numbers on their side, either that or they got a weapon that's overpowering, you know what I'm saying? Either they got a gun or AR or some shit that so that they feel comfortable, or they call the cops. You know what I'm saying? So they got the police to protect them. They got their guns, you know what I'm saying? And they got the narrative too, because if they do shit, like, you can be George Zimmerman and get off. And so it's like, you know, like, that's white privilege, like, to be able to call the cops. Black people don't call the cops because they're nervous. We just don't do that. Like, it's just straight up. Like, you know, I get that there are some black people here and there that might do that, but as a whole, the average black person that you meet isn't gonna be like peeking in the neighbor's backyard and be like, oh no, I'm gonna call the cops because something unfamiliar is going. You know what I mean? Like, we're not gonna call the cops like for a shoplifter or something, or it would need to be some dire shit. Like, so there's some shots fired and it's going down. Like, but for the most part, like, you would never ever see like a black person like get in a confrontation with a white person and then call the cops, because that's usually what's happening with the white people calling the cops. They want to confront black people, but they're scared. They don't know how to talk to people normally, so they can only talk in an antagonistic way, and talking to people in an antagonistic way usually leads to an antagonistic situation. So, and usually the white person doesn't want to be told what to do by a black person, or is trying to tell a black person what to do, and the black person doesn't want to do it. And then the black person is basically telling them, go fuck yourself. And they're like, oh, well, I'm going to call the cops, right? Because, you know what I mean? Most of these Karen situations, that's what it is. It's like, they're just scared. They can't handle the fact, like, because back in, you know, the history of this country, you used to be able to tell a black person all kinds of shit and they'd have to do it. But fast forward to now, people have a little bit more autonomy where they don't have to cross the street if a white lady's coming their way, or, you know, whatever. And you know, they're well within their rights to be like, hey, go fuck yourself. And then, you know, people get scared and they, you know, have this kind of ancestral history of being able to tell black people what to do, and the black people comply and they don't. And they're like, well, let's get the cops, because I know that the cops can have a rough-handed way with the black people, and the narrative is always on the cop's side, so they'll use them. So that's my thing. It's this duplicitous, like, fake culture that white people have, where, you know, on the surface they overemphasize this. They put this premium on being nice as opposed to being real, right? So they'd rather, like, be nice to your face and da-da-da-da, but when the chips are down, they call them the cops on your ass. Right? So yeah, so that's my hot take. My hot take is white culture is some pussy-ass fucking shit. Where they don't talk, they try to ignore fucking reality, they ignore race relations and think that it's all just gonna get better because it's the year 2040. We should be over it by now. No, we're never gonna get over it in America with the pussified nature in which we handle race relations. And we already looked at that CNN frickin' video. This shit was nonsense. How are we going to get over white supremacy? How about we shove a finger in white supremacy's butt? How about that? That's how we'll get over it. So ridiculous. Anyway, if you're white, don't be a fucking pussy ass bitch. How about that? How about have some hard conversations about race, tell a black person your feelings and allow them to get upset, and also listen to what the fuck a black person or person of color has to say. Shut the fuck up. Don't try to hijack that shit and make it about your fucking feelings. No, I'm not one of the coddly motherfuckers. I'm like, fuck your pussy asses. You've had Jim Crow, segregation, minstrelsy. You've had so much of a head start and you still act like a bunch of pussies. Get the fuck over it. That's all I gotta say. All right? If you're an ally and you already know this, you're not even going to get offended. There's white people who listen to what I'm saying. It's not that offensive to them. But the white gentry people who don't know and don't hang out with black person, well, I'm a black person. I'm telling you what's good. Stop being a fucking pussy about race. Confront your actual feelings about how you feel with black people, even if it's negative. It's all good. Just be able to articulate it in a way where you can talk to someone. Find anybody of color you can talk to about your real feelings and go from there.